So, now it's time to talk about one of the most important places in all of Planescape, the city of Sigil, or Sigil. And we're going to be talking about how there were 17 planes in existence in the outer planes. So with this huge, vast array of places to go, with the idea that you would be traveling between most of them during your travels at some point, where can you have a home base, a place to stay, a place to live, a place to rest and shop and stock up on equipment? What place could possibly be suited to go into all of these different areas in the Planescape universe? Well, that's where the city of Sigil comes in. Where exactly is Sigil? Well, that's probably the simplest question we can ask, and it's very hard to answer exactly where Sigil is. Well, all of the planes are located, well, not located, but sort of arranged in something called the Great Wheel. It's best to imagine it as a gigantic circle, with all of the different planes sort of forming a piece of this circle, or a piece of pie in a way, if you want to look at it like that. And in the center of all of this are the Outlands, the neutral planes, in the middle of everything. And in the Outlands, in the exact center of the Outlands, which is sort of impossible, because technically everything here is infinite, but let's just say the center of the Outlands, we have something called the Spire. It's like a spoke in the middle of the wheel, jutting outward in the center of everything. An impossibly tall spire. And on this infinite, impossibly tall spire, yes, on the top of something infinite, I know, but on the top of it is a gigantic ring, Taurus, and on this ring, or inside of it, is the city of Sigil, literally located on the inner band of the ring. So in many ways, the city is almost in the exact center of the Planescape universe. Technically that's not exactly true because we're dealing with infinite space here, but let's just say that it is. And in Sigil, we have a gateway to every other plane. The city of Sigil is called the City of Doors because it is the most portal-happy place in the entire Dungeons & Dragons multiverse. There are portals there literally to everywhere. So you can go to anywhere you want. Somewhere in Sigil you can find a portal to get there. So no matter where you want to go, somewhere in Sigil there is a portal to that place, to whatever plane, in the outer plane, in the inner plane, in the prime material plane, anywhere you can find that portal somewhere in Sigil. This makes Sigil a potentially very dangerous place, because literally any space that is bound on four sides, any kind of space, a window, a door, any place that is surrounded on four sides could potentially be a portal. So you could walk through a door in some random house and end up in a completely different plane of existence, making things substantially dangerous at any time walking through any of those bounded spaces in Sigil. This makes Sigil one of the most useful places in the entire Dungeons & Dragons multiverse, because you can get anywhere, but also one of the most dangerous if you're an idiot and not following the rules and not making sure you know where you're going, knowing where the portal is going to lead, and knowing what you need to have to survive in the place that you're going. When you first set foot on Sigil, you're going to notice that the weather is very, very strange and very, very unpleasant. It's sort of like LA in a way, in that there's a cloud of smog perpetually over the city, or maybe more appropriately like Victorian London. In the industrial age, there is a perpetual miasma that is covering the city. It's usually rainy and drizzling all the time, so again, like London. The fog there can be dangerous and hazardous to your health. You can literally start choking if you start breathing in there when you're unaccustomed to it. It reminds me of the deadly smog in London in the 1950s. It actually killed several thousand people over a couple of days and led to the Clean Air Act being passed a few years later. It's a very dangerous, unpleasant, sort of industrial feel all across the city, which makes it feel much less medieval. The whole city has a Victorian London sort of feel to it. And that can be cool for some, not so happy for others who are interested in a more medieval setting, but I love it. I think it's fantastic, it's fascinating, and the grimness of it is really exciting too. The general style of Sigil, the look and the feel of the city is pretty dark and strange. The buildings all have a very peculiar, grim, in a way almost hellish kind of architecture. Or maybe hellish isn't the right word, but a sort of grim, tough, stern look to them, with a lot of grim stone, iron, steel, and a lot of barbed points. Everything in Sigil, every building, has blades, spikes, and other kinds of points jutting out at them, creating a very hostile, intimidating, tough porcupine sort of look to it. Sort of like says, back off whenever you go to Sigil, with all of these points and spikes sticking out of everything. And it can be very dangerous if you're trying to climb up everything. Continuing the idea of a grim, industrial hellscape, the city has very little vegetation in it, and really anything green has to be imported from somewhere else, and even then there's still very little of it for the very rich. The only plant that seems to grow frequently in Sigil is something called razor vine, a grim, nasty black plant that can snake its way several feet, growing several feet a day around buildings, and if you touch it, it's like touching razor wire and it'll slash your fingers. And it's sort of useful as a deterrent for thieves who are trying to climb buildings, and can be incorporated into the architectural style of the city, but really it's a nasty, unpleasant thing that most people in Sigil try to destroy whenever they see. But it adds a certain air of uniqueness to the city, a certain look, furthering the look of blades and violence and sharp points and edges. It makes it a very hostile-looking city, but a very unique-looking city. It's not stereotypically medieval. In fact, it has an almost science fiction-y kind of look to it in a way. That's not the standard medieval setting in Dungeons & Dragons. If you can picture Victorian London during Jack the Ripper times in the 1880s and 90s, that's going to give you a good approximation of Sigil. The city doesn't really have any source of light, even though there seems to be some sort of sun-like energy that gives it light every now and again. Most of the time the city is in a permanent haze, a crepuscular sort of light in dawn or dusk, almost all the time, except occasionally it looks like day or night, but mostly it's a almost gas lamp type lit place, like in Victorian London. The city is the most cosmopolitan city in all of Dungeons & Dragons. Really no one race has ultimate power across the city, and you can find literally any kind of race you want, and it goes far beyond the standard humans, elves, dwarves, etc. of medieval fantasy. There is half-demons called tieflings, or half-angels called Aasimars. There are actual devils and demons. There's Barriours, these sort of centaur-like creatures. There's Githzerai and Githyanki. There is any kind of creature you can imagine. The city isn't divided up into good and evil. It's one of the most neutral places in the galaxy, and thus virtually any kind of creature can be found, or I dare say any kind of creature can be found in this city. Something that can deter players, I think, a little bit is the attitude of Sigilians or Sigilians. The people of Sigil are an arrogant bunch of pricks a lot of the time. They are haughty, contemptuous of others. They think they are in the know. They think they are so cool and they know everything, and they dismiss a lot of other people on the plains, and especially from the Prime Material plane, as being coolest country bumpkins in comparison to the incredibly cool world of Sigil. If you talk to a Sigilian, you're more likely to be called a Burk and sent on your way than ever given any helpful advice. I don't want to say that everyone in the city is an asshole, but just most of them are. Think of New York in the second Ghostbusters movie. Everybody is kind of on edge, unpleasant, a bit nasty. It's not a place for someone who is a wide-eyed naive. It's a place for someone who is cunning, who is smart, who has a lot of initiative and knows what they're doing, and knows how to get their way in the world. Now, to talk about Sigil, you have to talk about its ruler, the Lady of Pain. The Lady of Pain is a dreaded figure, often called her Dread Majesty, or her Serene Majesty, who is of godlike power, maybe one of the most powerful of all gods, but maybe not a god in that sense, because remember, belief powers things in Planescape, and even though people believe in the Lady of Pain and they know she exists, because she makes her wrath felt at all times, not at all times, but sometimes she can be extremely violent and cruel. She is one of the toughest beings in all of Dungeons & Dragons. She is not worshipped by anyone. All the other gods, all the other powers are worshipped by someone, and they gain strength from that worship. People believe in them, thus they have power. But the Lady of Pain is never worshipped, and if you try to worship her, she will kill you instantly. She also has extraordinary powers. One of the unique facts about the city of Sigil is that the gods are barred from entering it. And the gods, even though they're mortal in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, are supremely powerful beings, extraordinarily intelligent, and they can do almost anything that they want, except enter this city. The city of Sigil has at times been called sort of a pivot, in a way, on the galaxy. It's sort of like a lock holding everything together, which lends credence to its other name, the Cage. The Lady of Pain is its defender, and she might actually be locked within Sigil. The ultimate symbol of something that, if it got out, would destroy the entire planes. If the Cage were ever unlocked, and the Lady of Pain was let out, or the gods were let in, disastrous consequences would arise from that. The Lady of Pain, at one point, just to give you an example of what she's like, there is a deity called Eoskar, who is the god of portals, who is naturally very powerful in Sigil, the city full of portals. And he at one point became so powerful and so revered in the city that the Lady of Pain stepped in and felt that her own power was being challenged and killed Eoskar. She killed a god. She killed a deity and killed every single one of her followers all across the plains. So God knows how many people that was, but thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? What did they say followers? Did they mean her devout worshippers and her priests? But heaven only knows. But she destroyed his temples, killed him, killed his followers, and that was the end of it. She is an extraordinarily powerful being that can never really be defeated. As I said before, in Planescape, you can actually challenge gods. You could kill them if you wanted to, or godlike beings, but the Lady of Pain is unkillable.